Hello and welcome to Should You Play, where we highlight the good and bad aspects of video games, show some spoiler-free gameplay footage to whet your appetite, and hopefully help our viewers to avoid buyer's remorse.
Today we want to talk about Biomutant, a game that did not deserve to be review bombed the way it was, despite its inappropriate AAA tier pricing. It doesn't deserve the hate it gets, and I have been 100% behind this new IP since its release in 2021.
I'm sure you have heard a lot of bad things about Biomutant, and we are going to go over why it received such a bad reception whilst looking at the best aspects of the game. Firstly, Biomutant was very buggy when it was released, and even today has some massive frame rate issues. This large open world post-apocalyptic universe inhabited by animals who know Wung Fu was a huge ambitious project for such a small development cohort.
Despite this, the team over at Experiment 101 have been extremely responsive in addressing issues posed by the gaming community and listening to fans, which is greatly appreciated. They brought out lots of patches and updates for the game, which decreased the lengthy tutorial section, increased how impactful attacks felt, allowed users to disable the arguably irritating story time style of narration, gave the option to increase the difficulty, address glitches and more.
Most of the major common gripes about the game have been addressed, but there are a lot of people who have epic buyer's remorse over this one, primarily because the trailers placed an emphasis on epic combat and portrayed the game as being less of a cutesy, childish, light-hearted adventure.
What people got was nowhere near what they expected, and I completely understand some people's disappointment, but I absolutely adore this game. It's quirky, different, creative, with a huge world map jam-packed with things to do.
But the game is certainly not going to be for everyone. Before we explore the good and bad elements of the gameplay, let's talk about the main story and side questing.
Admittedly, the main story leaves a lot to be desired. The basic gist is that the Tree of Life is struck by disaster, causing it to be polluted from poisonous oil beneath the soil. The 5 tree roots which give life to the entire world is being eaten by 5 creatures which threatens to kill the tree before it can heal.
Furthermore, the game includes branching storylines where player decisions determine the outcome, and the situation is further problematic by 6 different tribes with different ideas on how to handle the Tree of Life situation. 3 of the tribes want to heal the tree and restore natural balance, while the other 3 tribes want to use this opportunity to expand their influence and conquer other tribes.
Like the way you have Renegade and Paragon routes in Mass Effect, this game has its own version represented by light and dark paths. Your light and dark score is measured by your aura and are represented by the typical devil and angel on your shoulder, always in conflict with each other. Which path you take will determine how the story unfolds, your compatibility with different tribes, and which special attacks you have access to.
If all of that wasn't enough, there is also an additional story arc involving your character's traumatic past and getting revenge on a foe that attacked your childhood village, which led to the death of both your parents. Happy times, eh?
Whatever your feelings on the main storyline might be, it's very tempting to just ignore the plot and be distracted by the copious number of things you can do in Biomutant. Despite players claiming that the world feels empty, I have never felt this way. The world is far from empty. Loot is everywhere. There are puzzles, albeit mostly very simplistic ones for babies, destructible totems, biocontainers, shrines, green leaves to spend, NPCs and objects to interact with, and side quests to complete.
The side quests can feel quite shallow and sometimes too easy, but it's definitely worth completing them and exploring because most of the things that make the game particularly enjoyable are unlocked through side quest completion, such as the goo glider, mounts, the summonable mech, and automation companion perks, which is that little robot creature that follows you around and aids you on your journey.
And that's on top of exploration, where you can explore towns, the sewer systems, the general overworld, and it will not be long before you come across different contaminated areas that are hazardous, which is interesting. There are hypoxia zones that have 0 oxygen, hot zones, cold zones, radioactive zones, and biohazard zones. You can spend biopoints to increase your resistance, or seek out the environmental hazard-resistant suits.
I appreciated the geographical diversity in Biomutant, and one thing I do want to mention is how you can track your progress in each area from the world map. Something you could not do when the game was first released, so you had to visit the area to see your progress pop up on the screen. Anyways, now that we've covered the story and myth-busted the claim that the game is an empty sandbox of nothing, let's move on to character customization and the different classes and races on offer.
When you start a new game in Biomutant, you can choose from several different races. You can choose between being a Primal, Dumdon, Rex, Hyla, Fip, or a Murgle. Although these races come with small perks, such as a Rex having slightly higher starting health, the races are primarily an aesthetic component.
You can change your character's fur pattern and colours, and the customization options are quite varied but not overwhelming. You can then choose between 6 different character classes: Deadeye, Commando, Psy-Freak, Saboteur, Sentinel and Mercenary. Although the character classes seem initially awesome, one of my main gripes about the game is that no matter which class you choose, it seems to have very little influence on the gameplay and combat.
Apart from a handful of class-specific abilities and starter weapons, most skills are accessible to all classes, and the inclusion of a bloody fantastic weapons crafting system means your character can be as strong as you want them to be based on the weapons you equip, but more on that later. It's kind of the illusion of choice, but I'm certainly not complaining because I fell in love with my little dead-eyed dude that I created for my first playthrough. He was adorable! Look at him, having the time of his life in his cute little outfits. Aww.
Anyway, don't agonise over character classes. The combat is mostly the same. I know that one of the things that annoyed players when it first released was the lack of significant lock-on feature, but I believe this has been patched and players can now lock on and strafe side to side similar to the Ratchet and Clank games. Another thing they have improved is how impactful melee attacks felt.
When the game was released, someone in a fan group I'm part of described the impact of melee attacks as being comparable to slapping enemies with a wet onion, which I thought was hilarious and unfortunately pretty accurate. But since then, the game has come a long way.
The melee and ranged attacks feel much more impactful, and the special attacks are very satisfying to execute, which brings us nicely to our next point. The skill point system in Biomutant can be confusing at first because it's kind of a multi-layered upgrading system. You can spend level up points on increasing your character's genetic makeup, which is comprised of strength, vitality, intelligence, charisma, luck and agility.
At the same time, you gain the same amount of upgrade points to unlock specific perks, which include mastery of weapons and honing your Wung Fu. There's also psi points and bio points that go towards unlocking magical powers and biogenetic skills such as telekinesis and mucus bubble.
It is quite complicated, but once you start unlocking special skills and experimenting with weapons crafting, the combat becomes so much fun. So since I provided the perfect segue, let's talk about weapons crafting and modding. I was extremely impressed with the crafting element of this game. You can end up with such unusual looking but very powerful weapons made from random bits of scrap. It's a highly customizable system and you can craft whatever weapon or clothing you desire, aesthetically and functionally.
You can add a range of mods to existing weapons and clothing to improve performance and resistances, or create new things entirely. I absolutely loved the automatic machine gun I created, which tore through enemies like they were nothing. There is also tribe weapons you can acquire, but to be very honest with you, compared to what you can craft, the tribe weapons are extremely lackluster.
There's a boomerang, a bow, nunchucks and more. It sounds quite exciting, but other than gaining the trophy or achievement that asks you to use the tribe weapons, I can't see a reason why you would want to default to those weapons.
And finally, I just want to talk about the overall vibe of this game. Biomutant has moments that can fill you with an inexplicable, overwhelming sadness over how these poor cute animals have inherited such an awful world full of toxic waste that us humans destroyed. When they innocently refer to objects that we recognise as things like twing twangs for guitars, it makes me so sad, especially with that low-key sorrowful music playing in the background. It's like David Attenborough is having a go at you in the future and saying, "Look at what you did," and you just want to apologise. I felt so sorry for my little dude, it's just so tragic.
There is definitely a lot of thought that went into the creation of this world. You can see the remnants of things that humans have left behind, and you can stumble across things that make you want to know more about what's happened. Such as 2 skeletons lying on the beach side by side with packed bags nearby. Were they waiting for a boat that never came to escape disaster? We will never know.
Anyways, we could talk about Biomutant for hours since it's such a huge game, but let's leave it there. I'm confident that we have given our viewers an overview of the best and worst aspects of the game.
So should you play Biomutant? It really depends. The game is definitely not going to be everyone's cup of tea, but my advice would be to play the game trial on PlayStation Plus Premium and see what you make of it for yourself.
If you do like the look of the game, then the good news is that the price has dropped significantly since its release. But do not listen to the haters, and remember that the narrator can be disabled.
It's a bridge. Just get over it.
Personally, I've found that choosing Japanese language improves the experience. Anyway, play the game for yourself, past the tutorial section, and make your own judgment, because I believe it is a wonderful game full of creativity and eccentricity.
Let us know in the comments what you think about Biomutant and whether you agree with our review. Stay tuned on the channel for more Should You Play episodes to gain spoiler-free reviews of recent, new and upcoming games. I've been Craig.
And I've been Heather.
This is Amalgamingle, and thank you very much for watching.
What used to be muck, as if it wasn't bad enough.